The shocking truth behind the Artur Silovs trade has been revealed, as some shocking details on Kyle Dubas' master plan moving forward have been revealed. We're going to break that down and why this trade changes everything for the Pittsburgh Penguins moving forward. We're going to break it all down in this episode of Penguins Digest. But before we do that, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 68% of you who watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel. So if you want to stay up to date with everything that's happening with the Pittsburgh Penguins, go down below and hit that free subscribe button. And again, this is the place to be for all your daily Pittsburgh Penguins news. But Mark, let's dive right into it. A pretty big trade. I think this actually does change a lot for the Pittsburgh Penguins heading into next season, because I don't think they're done, especially at the goaltending position, and things just, ramped up a little bit here for Kyle Dubas. So obviously, first of all, Nick covered it on the channel, this trade, the initial reaction. I think this is a great trade. I'm very curious for your thoughts too, because, it's no surprise you cover the Canucks as well on YouTube. So want to get your thoughts on this as well. But, again, great trade. Again, you're giving up a young player. We know what he could bring to the lineup in due time, but we knew that goaltending was a position of need for this team, and I think you get better with this trade. I mean, he just won a Calder Cup. We know what he did when he was called up to the Canucks a couple of years ago in the playoffs. So what's your take on this trade initially? And then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of all the statistics and what I believe Kyle Dubas is planning for the future, because I don't think Tristan Jarry is long for this team. But what are your thoughts on this trade?
I mean, right now, Artur Silovs is one of the hottest goaltenders in the league at the moment. We've seen him win a Calder Cup with the Abbotsford Canucks, securing the first ever Calder Cup. He was named MVP, 6 or 5 shutouts during this run. The Artie Party was a huge part, and probably the biggest part on why they secured their championship. And like you alluded to, 2 years ago, when Thatcher Demko went down with an injury, the Canucks went to Casey DeSmith. This did not work, and they immediately went into Artur Silovs as a goaltender, clinching a win versus Nashville to go into the second round. They did end up losing to the Edmonton Oilers, but Silovs was very good in this run. The save percentage might not be the highest during this run, but the Artie Party, Silovs, is very well respected around the league, and I think he does have a huge grace where he can grow as a starting goaltender. The big thing is Dubas looked at Patrick Allvin, the general manager of Vancouver, and said, hey, your backs are against the wall. You just signed Thatcher Demko to an extension. You have Kevin Lankinen signed to an extension. With Silovs not being eligible to be placed on waivers, well, he would have to go through waivers to go back to the AHL. It didn't make sense for the Canucks to hold on to 3 goaltenders, and I think Dubas did a very good job getting a goaltender that will one day at least be a very good backup, or maybe a starting caliber goaltender where he can lead this Penguins team when they're getting out of their rebuild. Yes, there's a bit to grow. Yes, sometimes he loses pucks in traffic, but the big thing with Silovs is every single year he goes into the postseason, the NHL, the AHL, with Latvia, any kind of stage, he dominates on this level, playing for Latvia, being named to their Olympic team, playing the World Juniors, winning trophies, bronze medals. Everything Silovs does is incredible, and I genuinely think from the Penguins side, they got an absolute steal with this piece.
Absolutely, and you can see here he's already a better playoff performer than Tristan Jarry in his very young NHL career. And I had it on screen there that he's absolutely fantastic. I mean, look what he's done in his very young career so far. He's only 24 years old. We know that goaltenders only really peak. I mean, look at Matt Murray, for example, around 25, 26 anyway. So he still has a lot of room to grow, and I feel like he is just growing into that role now where he can possibly be an everyday NHL goaltender. I think it's actually headed that way, because look at the numbers he put up with the Canucks in the playoffs, with both Canucks, that is, Vancouver and Abbotsford, of course. But he had a .931 in the playoffs this year en route to a Calder Cup. He was absolutely unbelievable. So, he doesn't have a lot of, or a large sample size, I should say, at the NHL level, but I feel like he is ready to take that jump. At least that's what I see. And I feel like that is actually the plan moving forward. And I want to get to that in a second. It's funny you brought up the Edmonton Oilers, because I feel like they actually factor in to these plans as well. But you can see here, he's 6'4". He's a big goaltender. That's something, we haven't really mentioned too much either. That he's a big goaltender, smooth lateral movement he gets from side to side. That's a thing that, you would expect all goaltenders to be good at now, but not all of them are, right? And we'll look at Stuart Skinner, for example, bring up the Edmonton Oilers again, not great at that, right? So, he's great at that. clutch in these moments when you need him to be. So he's showing signs that he can be that guy at the NHL level. But, when you take a look at the lineup now, and not necessarily the lineup in terms of skaters, but when you look at the goaltenders there on the bottom right, you have Tristan Jarry still on the team, right? Let's not get ahead of ourselves too much. And then Silovs is the backup now, which I think is a better option in terms of having a backup goaltender than Blomqvist. He did show a lot of promise last season, but I think Silovs is more ready for that role. But I do wonder if the plan is to have Silovs and Blomqvist as the 1-2 in the NHL going into next season. Tristan Jarry, I want your thoughts on this, Mark. There's been a lot of chatter about him going to Edmonton, rumors, and even as far as reports from Jeff Merrick and others like Elliot Friedman as well, linking him to the Oilers, and that the Oilers, for some reason, think that he might be better than Stuart Skinner or maybe Calvin Pickard. And we covered this in another video on the channel as well. But what's your thought on that? Do you think Artur Silovs is ready for maybe a tandem role where he's going, he's splitting the games with a guy like Blomqvist heading into next year? Do you think that's something that the Penguins would be comfortable with? Because it's let's make no doubt about it, right? Like, this team is not going to be great next year. I don't think they care that much, but I feel like they want to start giving an opportunity to Silovs here because, he has a lot of promise, especially what he's shown so far.
And I think the big thing is, like we were saying, he's not waiver exempt. It's either he's going to play in the NHL as a starting goaltender or a backup goaltender. So it does get very interesting. If they do not move on from Jarry, I really like Silovs in that backup role to get his footing. He had a slow start last year, but the Canucks team wasn't the best, missing the playoffs. We've seen the turmoil happening with that team, but I do think if they move on from it, a tandem of Blomqvist and Silovs, yes, there'll be a bit of growing pains, but I do like the future outlook of this. Yes, you might not go out and win 70 games or 60 games, whatever the realistic number is, but I do think having Blomqvist come up from here and there is a good option. Moving on from Jarry, if you can get off the contract and get some extra assets, that's awesome as well. But I am worried that you kind of throw these two kids to the Wolves, and yeah, Silovs is still very young. He's still a kid, so I think throwing them to the Wolves could either pan out where they come in like Cam Ward in his rookie season, they lead them to the playoffs, and it's all dandy, but I think there's a world where you kind of stunt their development if they're going out and just getting shelled every single night.
Yeah, you have to be careful. If you have some, again, if you take a look at the lineup, I mean, if you have some pieces there that can shelter these goaltenders, then in theory you would be fine. I just don't know if that's the case with this defense core heading into next season. And not even pictured here is Matt Dumba, who they just traded for as well, right? So it's going to be interesting. But I think the plan ultimately is to try and move off of Tristan Jarry's $5.3 million for the next 3 seasons to make even more cap space, to weaponize that even more heading into next season. And ultimately, I think, I don't know if they want to finish last, but I think that they do. I feel like that's in the back of Kyle Dubas' head, where he's like, if we can get a Gavin McKenna and bring him in and have Sidney Crosby mentor him, this franchise is in great shape, right? So it's going to be very interesting to see what they end up doing. But Mark, any final thoughts on this? Again, ultimately, I do think, and I think you bring up a good point, you don't necessarily want to throw some of these guys like Blomqvist, who's now, looking like, at least the way it is right now, will be in the AHL, a starter in the AHL. I also think, and we haven't talked about it in this video too, that stunts the development of Murashov as well. Sergei Murashov, who's going to be the next goaltender for the Pittsburgh Penguins. That guy, he's showing that promise in the AHL as well with all of his numbers. So that could stunt his development. But again, you don't want to throw them all to the Wolves. It's very interesting. I think that they have a lot of confidence in Silovs, that's for sure. He can definitely be a backup in the NHL. I just don't know if, the Penguins going into next season with Silovs as your starter, or, 1A, I guess, and then Blomqvist as your, backup goaltender, whatever you want to call it at this point, is a good idea. But any final thoughts?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is, Penguins fans, you're getting a very good goaltender. Like I said, the hottest right now, winning the Calder in the AHL and winning the MVP of it. You're going to see him play at the Olympics with Latvia. Everything this guy does, yes, it might be a tiny bit rocky to start the year, but when this team gets back into the playoffs, if Silovs is the starting goaltender, it almost feels like Marc-Andre Fleury passing the torch to Matt Murray during that dynasty run. This is a guy that can will you through the playoffs, and if the Penguins somehow sneak into the playoffs this year and Jarry is still there, do not be shocked and record this and send this in the videos or Twitter, wherever. Silovs will start playoff games, and he will drag this team into a second round at the very worst.
Absolutely. And I think that, the promise is there. We just haven't seen it, or a large sample size of it at least. But I think that he can, is it time for him to, you'll never really know, is my point, if it's time for this guy to take over as a starting goaltender in the league. He just has to be ushered into that role and given that opportunity. And I feel like he could possibly take control of that here in Pittsburgh. So it's going to be interesting to see what the plan is with Blomqvist, Silovs, and Tristan Jarry, because there's a bit of a logjam now, especially with Murashov showing the promise that he's showing down there in the AHL. So let us know how you feel in the comments. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything Pittsburgh Penguins.